All right, welcome everybody to yet another world building workshop. Tonight, we are going to be talking about a most perilous plot for your horror one-shot, and I hope that through this series of 3 episodes, you have been able to find exactly what you need for the inspiration on how to take your game into the horror realm and really help your players feel the intensity that we all feel whenever we watch thrillers or watch horrors. So we'll go ahead and give it just a moment as we wait for some people to arrive, and then we'll get started. Instagram, come on over to YouTube, hang out with me. I really want for you to see the notes tonight. All right, so when we're talking about creating horror, there's an especially there's the problem with it is the amount of intensity that we're supposed to be creating. The thrill is hard to prolong, right? Without it feeling like the movie Poseidon. If you haven't seen the movie Poseidon, it's about a Titanic-sized ship, and it is literally just a 2-hour train wreck of one problem to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And I found myself at the end of that movie just feeling absolutely exhausted. Not because it was like emotionally engaging. It was just like, holy crap, could there be like one more thing go wrong for these people? And I think that's why in thrillers and kind of the horror genre in general, you have a lot of shorter movies. You get these 1.5 hour, less than 2 hour movies that, hey, this is it. This is to the point. You're going to face the problem and bam, we're done. And so you're able to kind of get in and out and move on with your day. And we need to be able to create a similar plot structure for our players. Because if we prolong this horror without any hope or without any reprise, your players are going to be just emotionally exhausted. And it's okay for them to be emotionally exhausted. We just want to condense that down into a short moment and be like, wow, that was a great time. Thanks for that. And then we can move on with our day. And it's what we need. We need smaller chunks. And so there's 2 things that I like to mesh together in order for me to kind of structure my one-shots or to plot my one-shots. And the first is John 4 has the 5-room dungeon. And if you don't know the 5-room dungeon, please go look at the 5-room dungeon, because it is a perfect plot structure on what we can do to run our players through an encounter. And it's open and closed, and it gave everybody a little bit of something. And it's great. It's a really great structure for us to use. I like to call it the 5-step encounter, because we can use that structure in any setting, in any moment. We don't need it to be specifically about, a combat encounter or a dungeon for that matter. Carlos, hey, really excited for tonight. We have a horror one-shot coming up soon that I'm really hyped for making it. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that, Carlos. Everyone on Instagram, come on over to YouTube, hang out with us in the chat. We would love for you to be there. But let's talk about the 5-step encounter, right? Oh, so yeah, I call it the 5-step encounter because it can be applied to anything. I don't want you to think that this is just for dungeons, that this is 5 rooms that you have to do in order for dungeons. Hey, Catchy Cantrips, good to have you. This is something that you can use in any regard, in any moment. I've used this. One of the most entertaining. It was an auction. It was like a kind of an auction ball event, and my players went. It was a big role play evening, but I still used this format, and it was really effective. It helped me guide my evening so that I was able to structure things and not just get lost in the weeds. So, 1, you need a guardian or an entrance. There's a reason that this has not been discovered or encountered or used before. Right, in the instance of a dungeon, there's a reason that no one's raided this dungeon already. Is it lost? Is it buried? Is it deep in the woods? There's a reason for the entrance to have gone undiscovered. To use Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Nazis were searching in the wrong place, right? And they didn't have the right tool to find, the actual tomb that they needed to be looking in. In other instances, I've used in the past Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, when Dumbledore takes Harry to find the locket, right? Getting to the dungeon, the cavern, it's in a remote place that you could only access by use of magic. Because of the tides and the waves and everything, this cave is only accessible through magic. And that difficulty to find the entrance is the first problem. This is essentially a roleplay or puzzle encounter for your players. It's something for them to find or discover. It could be a guardian, it could be a golem or something like that that's guarding the entrance, and that's okay. But usually, probably not what we're looking for in a horror one-shot. I'll tell you why in a minute. So, number 2, our second here, this is definitely where you encounter the puzzle. Okay, this is the main puzzle. This is the main utility encounter. And I say utility encounter. If you don't know what a utility encounter is, please go watch my YouTube video on utility encounters. I specifically talk about them. Utility encounters are opportunities for your players to get off of the page, for them to put their stats down and think about, hey, in a roleplay perspective, what would my character with their background and their bonds, ideals, and flaws and personality traits, what would they do here? Catchy, I'm glad you're on YouTube. It's good to see you. So what would they do? And that is a moment that you can get your players into the scene. They're no longer looking at their stats and they're like, well, I've got like a +5 to history. That's great. Okay, fine, whatever. What we want for our players to accomplish here is for them to have a moment where they can realize that their character is more than just numbers on a page, right? That there's actual depth. And unless we can accomplish that, you're going to find much less engagement and investment from your players in the encounter in general, because it's just numbers on a sheet. That's a lot of the problem with combat in 5th edition. Because players look at it and they're like, ooh, well, I'm going to swing my sword twice and then I'll action surge and do it 2 more times. I'm like, okay, but like, what does it look like? Right, what does your character do? Talk me through that. Create a cinematic moment. And these cinematic utility puzzles, that is the gold, right? That is the gold that you're looking for in a role-playing game. So, 3 is the setback. This is the red herring. This is the problem. A problem has arisen, or rather, the tension increases, right? Something increases the tension. Oh, let's go back, actually, to my example, because I use it every time because it's absolutely perfect. J.K. Rowling literally used the 5-room dungeon when creating the Emerald Cavern. Right, so they've made it to the entrance of the cave, and wait a second, it's just a dead end. Where's the actual entrance? The puzzle here is, okay, well, how do we get in? Well, Dumbledore, uses some arcana checks and stuff, and he pokes around, and he says, it requires a little bit of blood. And he cuts himself, and he smears it on the wall, and they get in. And that's all it was. Or was it, right? Because the whole point here is for the players to get off the page. And that moment where Dumbledore says, Harry, my blood is much less valuable than yours. Ooh, there's some real depth there, right? And it makes you as the reader think like, is it? Like, where is this coming from, this belief? Like, is this just an old man being kind? And if you have a player at the table who perhaps takes on, soccer mom mentality and, I'll take the sacrifice here. Oh, how many hit points is it going to take? Holy crap, 20% of my hit points? Well, I'll just take the hit, I guess. And they'll do that. My blood is much less valuable than yours, and so let me take this hit. And that provides a moment in between your players, Dumbledore and Harry Potter, right, for them to create better bonds. Because that player who is sacrificed for, Harry Potter, suddenly feels like, well, is it? Like, is this what my purpose is? Like, are you protecting me because because I'm inadequate, or because I actually am important, because I'm the chosen one? And it's a beautiful role play moment there between Harry Potter and Dumbledore that you can experience at your table. And then the setback. Okay, we're in the cavern now, and it's a great big lake, and we can see that there's the glowing light in the middle of the lake. And Dumbledore's like, well, don't touch the water because there's creepy crawlies in the water. So how do we get across? The setback, or the tension, increases. This is the opportunity for you to give your players more of what they like, right? That's what I do. If my players are hardcore, like, hack and slashers, if they wanted to fight a golem, I'll throw them a golem. And if they need a more intense setback, guess what? This the Fellowship of the Ring, the descent beneath the mines, and they're on the swaying stairs, like, oh my goodness, what a great puzzle encounter. And then suddenly tension rises as orcs show up and start lobbing arrows at them as they're trying to get down the stairs. All that is a little bit of setback to increase the tension. Suddenly, oh no, like, we're being shot at as we're struggling with this utility encounter. It's something to raise the stakes and increase the tension for your players. That's all that it is. If your players are hack and slashers, increase the stakes there. Toss in more combat. If your players are role players, okay, this is the room starts shrinking. Okay, there's a deadline now. We gotta go. We can't just sit here and chit-chat our way through this puzzle. There's a timer now. Like, oh, someone bumped the lever, and like, okay, the room is shrinking now. Like, we gotta go today. So that's all that is. Step 4 here is the climactic moment. This is Dumbledore consuming the potion, right? In the Emerald Cave. This is him consuming... Oh, bumping my camera. This is him consuming the Emerald Potion and experiencing that torment. Note that is not Dumbledore flinging fire as the zombies are coming up out of the lake. No, that's not the climactic moment. That's the twist. That's step 5. The climactic moment is the sacrifice that Dumbledore makes to accomplish the goal here. It's the intensity has reached its peak, and Dumbledore is like on the edge of apparent death, incapacitation. Like, he's nearly unconscious. Dumbledore's on 1 HP, if you will. And then the twist happens, and the zombies are coming up, and you grabbed the locket, and later you realize the locket, or the reward, was not even the Horcrux that you were after. It was a diversion. It was a slap in the face of Voldemort, and that is the glory of the moment there. So how do we take this to horror? Well, we have to remember the creature, or the boss. If you recall the boss episode 1, you've got a bad guy. We need to know what style or genre they are. Man, I keep bumping my camera tonight. And taking that acronym, the boss acronym, and our style, we can plug it into kind of this climactic moment, right? And because it's horror, it's probably going to end up being some sort of hack and slash combat combat climax. That's okay. It's okay to have a boss monster, and it's okay to fight a boss monster. Nothing wrong with that. A hack and slash. Totally acceptable. You need to have at least one combat encounter per session, because I guarantee you that someone at your table is just there to roll dice and crush skulls. So give them the opportunity to roll dice and crush skulls. That's it. That's all you got to do for them. And they're happy. They will keep coming back because they got the opportunity to have a heroic, valiant moment as Garl Skullcrusher rips someone's spine out of their body. And like they're just like thrilled that they got to do that. That's cool. That's totally cool. Give them the opportunity for that. Cool? Catchy. Ooh. We've got a question. Some of these require the players to take certain actions. How do we create that sacrifice climax if the players don't bite? Well, that's the thing, though. If your players don't bite, that's not what they were looking for, right? Because we as world weavers are not here to railroad our players. I could create the most intricate political intrigue game that ever was, with the entire web of everything and like strings and lines and plots and stuff, and if my players don't care, they're not going to bite, right? And that is actually, I created a super cool villain, had an awesome combat encounter to open my campaign, and like after 3 sessions of various really cool combat encounters, they arrived at a ball. And they just like salivated over the political intrigue. And at that moment, I realized that these players don't give 2 craps about the hacking and the slashing. One of them did, right? But the other 4 players at the table, they were there so that they could have cool, fun role-play encounters and discover all the juicy secrets. So if you have a player, or if you have a table that's really not in the sacrifice mentality, the sacrifice isn't going to get made. And that's okay, because it's their characters. But then helping them realize that, like, so that's the thing. So if we go down this, let's think about the Dan Harmon plot circle real quick, okay? The plot circle, it has some various steps here, and then it boils down to, man, I wish I had those notes handy. Once they find it, they have to pay a price for it, okay? And that price should always make them pause. And that is why whenever I create a MacGuffin, whatever it is that gets my players down the road, I do not have an answer right then as to what that sacrifice is going to be. Because I could say, oh, it's going to take a blood sacrifice. And your players will show up to that moment and, oh, it's going to take a blood sacrifice. And they will just like gank Boblin the Goblin in the ear and yeet them off of the cliff, right? It's Marvel's. What's the cliffs with Red Skull? I lead others to things that I cannot have, right? For the stone, and you have to sacrifice that which is most precious to you. And Thanos, like he shed his like single tear as he yeeted Gamora off the edge. That blood sacrifice, yes, he paid a price, but okay, like big deal, right? Oh, audio on YouTube made me echoey. Uh-oh. What's going on here? Am I still echoing? No, Boblin. Audio on YouTube made you echoey. Am I echoing right now, guys? Let's resolve that real quick. Nothing. Oh, okay, cool. Maybe I was just... All right. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Okay. So, yeah, Thanos yeeting Gamora off the edge really wasn't that much of a visual sacrifice, right? Oh, okay, whatever. But you may have players at a certain table that feel like, oh man, like a sacrifice, and then you get a Widowmaker Hawkeye moment where you get two players that are like, no, I will sacrifice myself, and no, I'll sacrifice myself, and then then you have a moment where like you actually have a heartfelt sacrifice, like, oh wow, that was such a great role play session because your players were into it and they needed that. So it really depends on your group, and I would say the kicker is whatever the sacrifice is needs to be something that is valuable specifically to them. So not to your story, right? Because what I visualize as being, valuable to my story, this is not my story. This is the table's story. And while I could write ahead and create something ahead of time that would be a great sacrifice, it would not be a memorable sacrifice to my players because it was just me. It was just me making it up probably 6 months ahead of time. That's no big deal, right? Whatever I thought was important to me, they hadn't discovered Boblin the Goblin yet. And like, oh yeah, well, we've got this follower NPC that I really don't like very much, and so we'll just like sacrifice him. Cool. And then it takes that big moment, that epic climactic moment that you had created 6 months ahead of time, and it falls flat. Oh, yay! We get to find love on the best dating site. Good heavens. All right. So, that is that. Let's remove them. Remove. No. Yeah, view deleted message. No. Yeah. So that is what I have to say about that. Let's see. Oh, next, because we're running low on time. All right, 3, 2, 1. Boom. Whenever I make a one-shot, I like to have 3 scenes. These are descriptive. I've got a description made for them. Okay. 2 combats or role plays. It's okay if it's that sort of session, and then 1 meaningful role play. Okay, because you're going to role play all night. You're going to have NPCs that you talk to, but this is specifically a role play that the NPC is going to reveal a secret to your players that is going to move them into the next scene, that is going to make them encounter those combat moments, right? And you can take these 2 things and kind of mesh them together. I squish them together, and that's what makes my one-shots. Carlos, so this one-shot I'm playing, I want to have a big reveal at the end where it connects with the current campaign my players are in, but I'm not sure if it would be too early. So, one thing that I do, Carlos, I have a one-shot, side quest Saturday is what I call it, and it reveals meta information. I am constantly giving my players meta information. Don't be afraid to give your players meta information, because it is a huge engagement and investment reward for those players that go to that one-shot. If you get players that go to a one-shot, and they get some juicy tidbit of information, and they're like, oh, okay. For example, this god has been released and is the reason for certain things happening. And then your players encounter that in the campaign. That's when you get the, wait, what? Like, that is the moment where you get players having the juicy goodness of realizing all that lore that you've written, because we inevitably write way more lore than we're ever going to reveal to our players. So use it. It's sitting there. Take those one shots and use that meta information to reward those players that are invested in your campaign, and it gives them the opportunity to see a little bit further out, because their character only ever sees the itty bitty little bit of your world. And if you take a one shot and you reveal why it is that the fairy veil fell and the bone elves have emerged to invade Hallandal, one of my campaigns, suddenly your players, when they encounter the bone elves, are like, it's these guys. Like, are these the guys? These are the guys, right? And it's a really cool moment that you're able to share your world with your players. So don't be afraid to share that meta information, Carlos. Definitely. But we're talking about, gosh dang it, I got like 4 minutes left. We're talking about horror. We haven't even built an encounter yet. It's just me talking about our perilous plot. So, using the Build-A-Boss, episode 1, and the Sinister Scene, episode 2, now we need to talk about the perilous plot. What do we need to do to really accomplish the horror feel? The horror feel is going to boil down into the types of puzzles that they face, how that tension increases, and what your climactic moment with that episode 1, your boss, looks like. Are currently in Barovia. Yeah, Barovia is a great opportunity for all of this. Please apply all of this to anything Barovia. You will not be disappointed. Hey, just got here. Hate missing the start. Yeah, you missed out on everything. Well, there's only 5 minutes left. And that's okay, because this is probably going to be a longer episode because I am so far behind. I'm so far behind. All right, here we go. Talking about baddies. All right, so we've got that bad guy that we built, right? And I don't have one specifically in mind, but I did have a thought about the Bagman. And if you are familiar with the Bagman and the lore in the Bagman in 5th edition or in Dungeons & Dragons in general, the Bagman was someone who fled and hid in a bag of holding. And I'm sure that everybody has had people hide in their bag of holding. That's great. That's all well and good. But what happens to the person who gets stuck hiding in their bag of holding? And that is a fun thing to think about in what that becomes, right? And if you whisper, follow my voice, follow my voice, follow my voice 3 times into any open bag of holding or dimensional space, you summon the Bagman. And that's a fun idea. It's like a CR5 creature. I saw one that's like a CR5. I saw another that's like a CR9. It's a fun idea, but it really boils down to a couple of unique powers, right? It's got like alien mind. The biggest, most important one that I saw is going to be the amorphous ability. Anybody who has watched any of my world building workshops knows that amorphous, good heavens, spelling words, English, amorphous. You know that I love to give movement abilities. Anything that allows your bad guy to get in and out, do what it needs to do, and escape before your heroes can one-shot it in a single round, right? So the amorphous ability is perfect. Have it move through that 1-inch space that it's able to move through, do bad things, and then move back out. Become inaccessible. I straight up told my players they were struck with inexplicable anxiety. Suddenly their hearts started palpitating like they took pre-workout if it didn't and didn't make it to their workout on time. I like that. They're currently in Barovia, make one-shots. It was all sort of a dream type of thing. So I think that I like Things I Know. That's a really great use of foreshadow, right? And in any of these role play moments here, where they're these puzzle moments, you can give them that sensation. You can give them the sensation that there is like an impending doom, right? That something is there. And that all goes into the creep factor. Remember, we're talking about horror one-shots here. And so the slasher killer, the monster, the psychological paranoia horror, ooh, gosh, it's a glorious use of you feel the palpitations. And you can use music. I encourage you to use music to accomplish that. Because as you add that little sense of horror, the creepiness into the music, it is the only way that we can portray how our characters should feel to players that are sitting around a table. Right? We're sitting around a table with Cheeto fingers and a bang, man. Right? They probably got palpitations anyways because they're all jacked up on Mountain Dew. But the only way that we can get them to feel like the horror of the moment is to use those tips and tricks that we've got, right? Change the lighting, change the actual setting that they're in, add in a little bit of music, right? Jack the AC down, open the window, right? Anything to add to the moment. And it's a really great tool. Don't be afraid to use physical tools in the room right there with your players to help them feel what their character is feeling. Love it. Okay. But amorphous is a great movement ability for bad guys. Any sort of like shadow step, misty step, anything that can get them in and out inexplicably, all right? Or move them through walls. That's another great thing you can do. The terrain here. So remember, whenever we're talking about this climactic scene, I always like a power. We need to bump up the place, right? And then we need a parlay. It's going to be hard to parlay with the bagman, right? It's not talking to us. It doesn't really have, I think, official bagman speaks like giant or something weird or something like that. Parlay is, I always use the example from Megamind because it's just so perfect. In Megamind, when he's bantering with, or dueling Titan, and he's like, this is where we exchange witty banter. And Titan's just like, wailing on Megamind, and he's like, I don't know where to go with that. And if we do that to our players, remember, we probably have players at this table who are in it for the role play. Right? They're the whole reason they're here is for the role play. And if you have a 3-hour combat session, those role play players are not going to be invested in this scene. They're going to be sitting there on their phone doing who knows what, because they know that they have 20 minutes before their next turn. There's no parlay. There's no opportunity for them to listen and get a little download of lore or hear a secret being said. And so we need to prepare voice lines. That's a tool that we can use. A little hard for horror, but in general, make sure you've got voice lines prepared. Things I know. Vampires can crawl upside down on the ceiling. Perfect surprise creep factor. Yes, exactly. And I would always encourage, if you have a homebrew environment, don't be afraid to use the opportunity to just reskin things. It's okay to have vampires that aren't vampires, or zombies that aren't zombies. You can just use the stat blocks and do whatever you want with them, right? You don't have to use them as the way that they are prescribed. You can reskin things however you would like to accomplish the goal that you're trying to accomplish, especially with horror, right? Reskin the crap out of anything you need. Do whatever you got to do to accomplish the creep factor. And that can be tough with voice lines, okay? That can be tough. So what we can do is prepare maybe not voice lines or parlay moments for our players with the bad guy, but our players with each other. And one thing that I really have enjoyed doing lately is if a player is downed and they're making death save rolls, have them describe a moment, describe a memory from their past. And this is really good in especially one-shots because you're kind of developing the character right there. But it provides a little bit of humanity. And like, yeah, this is meta. Like, your players don't understand this. But you can have a player, hey, Jack, what is, as you're living your last moments here, what is a memory that you shared with Jill here at the table from your past at some point? And they sit there for a moment and they describe, how they met for the first time at a bar, and they got into a fight together, ended against each other, and it was all hectic, and they both got arrested by the city watch, and then they spent the night in jail together, and they've been best buddies ever since. And that's a fun moment, a parlay, a role play moment for that player who would otherwise just be sitting there. Welp, I rolled a 9, another fail. So you're involving them in the story, even if it's not the story that's happening right now. Something to think about. All right, you guys, I am like overtime already. Please like and subscribe, all of the things. Do we have any questions? I know this is generically. I really talked very little tonight about how this can be applied to horror. But it's about coming up with a perilous plot, if you will. And I would use this in any moment that I'm writing a one-shot, whether or not it's a horror one-shot. This is the exact format that I would use in creating content for my players. If I'm making a horror one-shot or not, a meta-knowledge one-shot, whatever, this is the exact format that I would use when I am helping my players have a fun time. Create engagement, create investment in your campaign. So, if there are no questions, then I'm going to say that we're probably going to get out of here. Or at the very least, we're going to let Instagram go. Instagram! Like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube. What are you doing? Come on over to YouTube. Hang out with us. I put it in my stories every week. Please, come hang out. And have fun. As always, take care of your players. YouTube. If we don't have any questions, I'm going to wrap it up for the night. I don't think I see anything has popped up. So thank you so much for hanging out. We have gone long as usual. I don't know if I've ever finished on time. But that will be the conclusion for the evening. Thank you so much. Have fun. And as always, take care of your players.